get their money.
Yeah, I think as someone who grew up as a libertarian, the attractive thing about Bitcoin for me was obviously it gives you a choice, an option out of this system that is, pretty parasitic. And the fact that it exists means that for a lot of libertarians out there, if you're concerned about various socialistic type policies like UBI and various things becoming more the norm, you have a choice. You don't have to participate nearly as much in those things because of Bitcoin existing. And I think that's also a good thing. We need to realize that these policies to bail out governments, the precedent's been set now more than once, and the moral hazard exists. So in this world, the reality is this moral hazard exists, and this is a tool that the central planners and managers of society are willing to use and will use again. And that means if we're going to fight for anything, it's not, conservatism versus liberalism or capitalism versus socialism. It's really this moral hazard should be utilized for the people first before anything else. And because it's already upside down, it's being, the Cantillon effect, right? Is the people closest to the printing press have access first to all of this quantitative easing. So if we're going to fight for anything as a whole group around, a lot of communities, a lot of countries are going to suffer under printing power from their central planners. What we should be fighting for is that this money that's getting printed be given to the people first. So UBI is a way to do that. And we should not talk about the implementation about it, not fight over capitalism versus socialism and things like that. We know this is happening in this world. And it's actually not, I would be very concerned if Bitcoin did not exist with this present reality, but Bitcoin is here, thanks Satoshi.
Yeah, neoliberalism is the true enemy, which is just enriching the people who control the printing press, who control the tap of money, and then being able to just divert that money into their own interests. And that's the thing which we are, in fact, fighting against, like just by opting out, by storing our wealth or value in Bitcoin, and then encouraging other people to go into Bitcoin as well. Is we're fighting against this neoliberalist idea of being able to just control the flow of money and where it goes. Yeah.
Talking of freedom, I'm going to have to say thank you very, very, very much for having me on the show. But I must free myself to go and help calm a baby, which I may keep waking up accidentally. So take care, everyone. And
thanks so much. Thanks, Dan, for joining us.
Cheers.
Bye, Dan.
Cheers, Dan.
Take care.
It is starting to get later in the European time zone. It's only around 2:43 here on the West Coast. The price of Bitcoin's about the same, $8,590 a coin. That's $1 for 11,646 Satoshis. You guys want to keep on going with the conversation?
I don't think I ever spent less than an hour on World Crypto Network when I was here before, so I'm not going to buck that trend now. If you're in it, you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound.
Always be the last to leave a party.
Exactly.
It depends if you're the one taking the cash.
Yeah, this reminds me of Room 77 because Jorg's always there. Yeah, he's always encouraging us to carry on until the wee hours.
Yeah, of course. Like you're not doing this for the money, you're doing it for the movement. That's what I always loved about World Crypto Network. It was always about the movement. It was never about like who owned it or how many hits you were getting. It was like the people that came were the right people. The people that turned up to the live stream were always the right people that needed to be there. And it always was like a beacon. It always attracted those like-minded individuals, and it always had a really good vibe. It was never a channel about growing big or getting 10,000 views or any of that shit. That was all just noise and distraction. That's how Tone Base went off and did. Like he became really popular and famous, and that's great. Good for him. But that was never what this channel was about, and that's because of Tom. Because of what Tom did. He got people together. He was like rallying people. He got the chat groups, and invited everyone. Was always like the fire starter. And so yeah, my philosophy is when you come onto our crypto network, it's a competition to see who can stay on the longest.
So I've just done some blockchain monitoring, and I could see the transaction going from Tom's account to yours, Chris, just now as you were talking. So
No, I'm not. No, he's not.
Transactions.
He's doing the opposite of paying me.
No.
It fell out.
Like
no, he's not paying me for saying this.
I completely agree. It's events like this. It's events like Baltic Honey Badger. It's events like Advancing Bitcoin, CoinFest in UK, grassroots. That's the whole point. This is about economic theory at the grassroots level, monetary re-education, and then expanding it around, and everybody being part of this revolution, not just a few people telling everybody else how money should work. And I think networks and like the World Crypto Network are a big part of that.
I mean, it's always something you can fall back on because it's not corrupt, it's not chasing money, it's just true and honest. And anyone who's on there, they're on there because they want to just help grow the Bitcoin infrastructure. It's been my staple. I think it's the only media outlet I've paid for. I still pay my Patreon towards World Crypto Network. Anyone out there, join the Patreon for World Crypto Network. But no, it's great. It's great. It's been a refuge all these years. So who have we got left here? So we've got Ugly Old Goat there. How's he doing? How's the tequila going, Ugly Old Goat?
Looks like he's chatting away with Juan. Neither of them have headphones on. They might not be able to hear us.
So guys, I'm gonna have to duck out now. After 30 minutes of sleep prepping for the halving, I'm getting a bit tired. But thank you very much for inviting me on. I've watched many of your shows, and I know a lot of you guys. But I'm going to let you go. Happy halvening. Happy next epoch.
All right. Thanks so much, Obi, for joining us. Thank you, man.
See you guys. Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got to take a quick break to prepare for happy hour with 2-Bit Idiot. I've been live streaming for about 6 hours now, hopping all over the internet.
Well, great job, Jameson, and thanks for joining us, and thanks for doing what you do for Bitcoin. We all appreciate it.
See you on the
Jameson.
Twitters. Happy having.
All right, we're starting to get quiet in here. What do you guys think? Do you want to invite the audience? You want to see what's going to happen?
Check the questions as well. There were some questions before.
I saw some, but a lot of them are just like, I have a favorite altcoin. What do you think of it? I think it's your favorite. It's not my favorite. You need to defend it. It's not for me. It's your favorite altcoin. So, all right. So I put the link in the live chat. If you guys want to follow it, it's a Zoom link. Zoom did give us kind of a waiting room. So you'll go into a waiting room first so we can admit people one at a time. If you just want to say hello to Bitcoin, add something to our little history here, maybe say something nice about the halving or tell a very brief story about how you first found Bitcoin. We'd love to have you here on the World Crypto Network. There's still around 118 people joining us live in the chat, so great time to give us a thumbs up and a share and subscribe down below. Hit the bell for notifications. We do these shows almost every day. And keeping an eye on the price of Bitcoin. Still 8,500, though it went down when I started looking at it there. Must be Schrodinger's cat or something.
He's moving.
Why don't we do a quick skip around all the audience the panel members now and just ask them what they're looking forward to in this. I liked what Obi was saying, calling it an epoch in the next Bitcoin epoch. So, Thomas, what are you looking forward to in the next Bitcoin epoch?
Oh, put me on the spot. Well, let's try to recap the last Bitcoin epoch or whatever you're calling it. So, we got a lot more people in Bitcoin this time, right? Like they talked about earlier, CNBC's mentioning it, at least when the price is down, they took the little ticker off during all the time you should have been buying. And then when it popped back up, they instantly put the ticker back on and started covering it. It's almost like they don't actually give you information. They're just reporting on what's already happened. So in the last 4 years, we went from having 2 or 3 podcasts or YouTubes about this to having hundreds, maybe thousands. The same thing in coins. We went from maybe 1 Bitcoin, 10 or so altcoins to hundreds, if not thousands of altcoins. So if we continue this growth trajectory, You're going to see Halvening shows on real TV networks, if real TV networks even exist. So we might see somebody like PewDiePie doing a Bitcoin Halvening show. We might see some other new kind of YouTube network doing these shows, these kind of things. I think Bitcoin's going to get bigger and bigger, which probably will cause the price to go up, which will cause the complexity to go up, and it'll be harder to mine and all of those things. So mainly I'm just seeing growth, and I'm not sure if we're going to be in a citadel next time, or a bar on top of a roof, or Amsterdam, or wherever the next Bitcoin Halvening party will be. I just hope that we got rid of the virus and everyone can have a good time again. So.
Hell yeah, man. Fucking booze, cigarettes, and people. Like, bring it on. Nind, are you still there? Are you still with us?
Yes.
You are. So what
Sorry,
you
my
forward to?
camera's up.
For those who don't know, who Nind is, I won't introduce him, but he's basically all of our bosses. And Bitcoin wouldn't run if Nind didn't exist. So, so Nind, what's for the next Bitcoin epoch? What you're looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to central banks and banks going down like the Titanic did and being replaced by Bitcoin.
All right, major structural changes, big happenings. Let's go to Will Pangman. Will, what do you think is going to happen in the next Bitcoin epoch?
Oh man, I don't know if I was ready to answer yet, but I think it's definitely along the lines of what Nim said. You know, starting to see nation states more than just Bulgaria holding Bitcoin and hodling and mining, nation states mining, like more than just Iran, you know, more than North Korea, quote unquote legitimate nation states. And more of that, and banks adopting cryptocurrencies on their balance sheet, probably stable coins first, but also Bitcoin. So I think that'll be an interesting development.
Yeah, man, I think you're 100% right there. Like, there will be differentiation between Bitcoin and then this sort of murkier world of crypto bollocks. But you will see more and more central banks just actually buying Bitcoin. Particularly like when you think of somewhere like Germany, where they're literally running out of vault space. Like they can't store the amount of gold they want to buy. As time wears on, I'm sure they'll start buying Bitcoin. So no, that'll be fascinating thing to see.
I love the term crypto bollocks.
It's for the new epoch.
All right, let's go. David, what do you think of the new crypto epoch?
Where to start? For me, I had a lot of love for Bitcoin. I still have, but I think that it's over manipulated. So I'm wishing to simply have more people, more adoption, more people getting interest, doing their own research, and getting trained and having interest for a mean of freedom, that is that technology. Because if we're not careful, this tech that is really good could simply, well, I don't think it could, but sometimes I think about it. I'm thinking, could it get shut down? Very difficult, but there is so much manipulation in the media that technically speaking, they could just say it's not for me. It's too dangerous. It's too complicated, and it is when you think that every one of you spend time, teaching people, explaining how Bitcoin works, why it is different, why it's a challenger to finance in general, or at least it's an add-on that is really interesting, and people seem to just not really go for it, and I'm wondering why. So I would wish for that. I would wish for more education, more interest as well. I think people don't see it for what it can do. They see it as a quick buck, and essentially a way to get richer faster, but they think they missed the boat. And I think it's not just about that. You see, I think they're missing the point. So we need to emphasize on that more, I think.
I think so, definitely.
By the way, David is a very good and accomplished singer. So maybe he wants to grab his guitar in a bit.
Oh my God, you. No, not live in front of so many people.
All right.
Oh, by the way, I've seen some questions there, and some questions were saying, is everybody here running their own nodes?
Hell yeah, multiple.
Oh yes.
So that's a good question, right? So
Yep.
how do you do it? What's the best way, for, I don't know, with our audience, if they are all OGs, semi-OGs, generation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Bitcoiners, more on art, but it'd be good
think
to
the
understand
best
how you
way-
guys run it.
Yeah, I think the best way is to use an old computer, or not too old, but an old computer with a terabyte or more on the hard drive, and just let that be a dedicated Bitcoin machine for you. That's not the most private way, that's not the most secure way, but it's the easiest way for a lot of people. If they have another machine lying around, and maybe they recently upgraded, they can just take an old laptop that needs, these days, probably needs about 1 terabyte, but yeah, I think that's the quickest and easiest way. I think there's lots of services that are really great to support as well. I don't need to endorse any here, but they're out there, and there's several. So there's kind of one-stop shop, or little packages you can order and follow the steps, and they have great customer service. So.
And certainly, Chris Ellis, you used to build nodes out of Raspberry Pis and hard drives.
Yeah.
Do you still suggest that, or do you have a different way these days? What are you up to?
Yeah, well, the Raspberry Pi 4 obviously is a lot more powerful. You've got, the SBCs, the single board computers now are so much more powerful than when I was really doing it. But yeah, I do have old laptops. I definitely recommend, if you've got an old machine, it'll be a lot easier because you won't have to deal with the Linux. But if you are interested in getting into the command line, of course, I'm always going to encourage you to do that. I think that the idea that people look at text and the terminal and they just freak out no, I'm a civilian, I can't deal with this. No. You definitely want to educate yourself. Oh, it's a little kitty making a cameo there. You definitely want to educate yourself in all of that, because that's not going away anytime soon. That's where the power is.
Yeah, just one.
Don't be a slave to the GUI. Don't be a slave to the bubblegum UI and the app stores and all of that kind of lock-in and the walled gardens.
Beautiful.
I just have one.
But I did.
Yeah, one specific caveat on that is I remember running a full node on an iMac. I don't know if you have ever dismounted one of those 21.5 inches iMacs, but I would not recommend to run a full node on an iMac.
Did it burst into flames?
No, you just have to completely remove, the glass and everything. So,
oh wow, shit.
Yeah. So, so I would think stick to the simple stuff you can, and because your hard drive will die on you eventually. But yeah.
I did have something to say about the next epoch in Bitcoin, though. Don't know whose turn it is.
All right, go ahead, Chris, and then I think Victoria is after you. Go ahead.
Oh yes, okay. So I'm really interested in the repatriation of supply chains. I think that this sort of global trade but the dependency on China is going to be a really big meme in the next few months, probably this year actually. So I think a lot of manufacturing is going to, at least Western governments in Europe and Northern America, are going to want to bring back a lot of the supply chains that were outsourced to places like India. If you just look at the pharmaceuticals industry, for example, a lot of generic drugs are manufactured in India and China, puts a great dependency. And what COVID-19 has really done is exposed a lot of those weaknesses. And so now when the West is highly dependent on China, of course, China has the opportunity to weaponize their manufacturing base by holding back on a lot of that supply. Now, so I actually am quite worried for my children's future. I don't have any children, but for the next generation, I'm kind of worried that there could be a global standoff between the United States and China as two competing empires. I mean, essentially, you have the United States, Russia, and China. Those are your three choices right now in terms of global hegemonies. And I think that really there's been a lot of exploitation by the West. A lot of Western corporations have exploited the low wages in China, which is, therefore been an exploitation of their civil liberties. On the one hand, these American companies have enjoyed the land of freedom in the United States, but on the other hand, they have put all their manufacturing in a country that is very oppressive and that has taken all freedoms away from a lot of those people. And that's how they got those cheaper wages, which is how they sold those iPhones so cheaply. If you repatriate the supply chains into Northern America and Europe, you're going to be looking at $5,000 iPhones, and consumers may not be willing to pay those prices. I think that this will create a political tension on the global stage. I think that the future doctors watching this, the future, the people that actually, because, a lot of us, I mean, certainly me, I'm nobody, but if you actually have some talent, you're going to want to make sure that you have some resources, you have some financial independence. If you're caught up in like a massive geopolitical, currency war, and maybe even a hot war, which is what could come of this, if this standoff can't be solved with diplomacy, then you are going to need some independence. You're going to need a currency that is free from these nation state currencies. And that's why I actually think that Voltero, I think what Josh is doing with the Voltero, where you have the balance of gold and Bitcoin, is a lovely balance of like, and again, I'm not being paid, but like what Josh was saying earlier, anything that you own in your possession, anything you can touch is what's valuable. It's what really can't be replaced is what's valuable to you. Anything that is virtual, any like numbers in a bank balance, all of these are just hypothecations. They're just illuminations. They're not actually real. They're just promises. And so I'm kind of concerned about that. I'm concerned about the geopolitical conflict between the United States and China, and this repatriation of supply chains.
Don't worry, they own all of our debt. They can't attack just yet. They might, what I think they'll do is they'll just come over and take the land, and they'll just be moving in, and you'll be like, where'd you come from?
That's the hot war.
We own
That's
the whole
the hot
thing.
war I'm worried about, yeah.
Well, no, but I think
But
it'll be
what about
more
Taiwan?
casual. I think it'll be like immigration now, where like at first you have a lot of these new people, then you have a lot more of these new people, then you just say, well, let's live with these new people. Let's all get along. But I don't know if we're going to get to that stage or not. So definitely exciting stuff. Victoria, we want to go to you. What do you think of the new Bitcoin epoch, and of course anything else that we've been talking about too? So.
Well, I mean, my perspective, I mean, I came into Bitcoin as a business owner. So the thing that highlighted the value of Bitcoin to me was realizing how vulnerable my business was to the card machine not working. Because if the card machine stopped working, the only thing my clients could do in order to pay me was to go around the corner and get some cash from a cash machine. And of course, with all these governments trying to make everything cashless, that's really difficult. It really highlighted to me how vulnerable my business was relying on the banks. And then when I realized how vulnerable the banks were, I was like, oh my God, what do I do? And so it was actually the process of seeking a new payment method for my business that it was one of the factors that led me to Bitcoin in the first place. And the thing about this this pandemic we're going through, a lot of businesses have been forced to shut down, particularly capital intensive businesses. I mean, my background is as a dentist. And so, if you're running a dental practice, you've got some incredible costs that you're having to meet on a daily basis. That's one of the reasons why, dentistry and other, capital intensive healthcare systems are so expensive, because you've got to pay those bills on a regular basis, even if you haven't got, those are your fixed costs, even if you haven't got any income. And so, for the whole country to shut down, even for 6 weeks, there are not many businesses that have that kind of float lying in the background for that to happen. And then, of course, with, central banks and everything now printing money faster than the eyes can see, I think the vulnerability for businesses are when societies start to kick into hyperinflation. And it was that realization that got me into Bitcoin. So, you know, 2 months ago, I wrote my book. I don't know if anyone's seen it. Can't even see it on the screen there. There you go. Truth Decay, How Bitcoin Fixes This. You know, I'm now on a mission to get all the businesses, because I think, you know, if we start to go into hyperinflation, the middle class and individual businesses are incredibly vulnerable. And in that kind of situation, you know, Bitcoin would be a lifesaver. So, you know, and I think given what's happened recently, you know, for the next 4 years, you know, that's going to be the transition. You know, it's not just about hodlers and savers. I think if we can persuade the businesses that they really, you know, this is what's going to save them, they'll be the ones starting to educate their customers. You know, if they're now saying we accept payment in Bitcoin, and in fact we'll give you a discount if you pay in Bitcoin, you know, because Gresham's law drives the sound money out of the system, but once you go into hyperinflation, that flips. You know, and so I think the next 4 years is going to be about educating the businesses and how having some kind of digital sound money is what will keep them alive. I mean, obviously, you know, I think for the first few years we've had a lot of volatility as it breaks ground. I think also for the next 4 years there'll probably still be some volatility, but probably less. I mean, we've all seen the graphs as the halvings continue, the graph flattens off, and so as time goes by, the price will become less volatile. But if you can coach the businesses how to handle that volatility by, you know, varying the discounts that they offer to their clients, I think that could be very powerful, and I think they're going to be strongly incentivized to do so. So I think that's where adoption is going to come from, because you know, the business owners are going to be feeling a lot of pain in the near future, and most of them are so busy trying to keep a handle on their businesses and keep it going, they don't have time to study the financial system. So if someone comes along and kind of says, I can see you're in trouble, this is what you need, and this is the background that you need to understand in order to do it. And, you know, before you know it, the population has taken the problem out of the government's hand, you know, and the government are on the back foot trying to catch up. That could be very, very interesting thing to watch.
Very cool. And you can check out Victoria's book on Amazon. It's called Truth Decay, How Bitcoin Fixes This. And we've got a link right there in the chat. So we're taking care.
Thomas.
We got it set. So
I like that title. That's clever.
For a dentist.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, that's good. I like what you did there.
Very cool. And I think everyone's said about the new epoch. Maybe Ugly Old Goat and Juan, are you guys with us? Maybe. Do you guys want to describe the new epoch in Bitcoin? We just got through 4 years. Tell us, what do you expect to see in the next 4 years? Maybe you're with us. I'm not sure.
They're just kicking back.
They're just kicking back. All right.
They don't seem like. Yeah.
Well, we still have 116 people watching us live. We've been going for 5.5 hours now. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Victoria. I had no idea that you'd written a book, Truth Decay. Fantastic. Congrats to you. I'm going to buy it.
Thank you.
I'm going to read it.
Oh, thank you.
I want to
As should
ask
all
a question. I want to ask a question
Go
about
on.
this book. So, yeah, so do you actually explain to business owners in the book about the transition? Because obviously there's a reason why governments in recent years, in the last decade or so, have been putting such an emphasis on VAT or sales tax. It's because they can easily leverage their power against business owners more than they can against citizens who could easily change address and disappear and go off the grid. But if you're a business, of course, you have an incentive to advertise. That gives you a fixed location. You have to register with Companies House in the UK, etc. So they've always found it easier to leverage, the tax authorities, HMRC and IRS, have always found it easier to really leverage business owners. And so how would it work in your view for businesses to adopt Bitcoin without them succumbing to the tax authorities, etc.?
Well, I mean, starting with the book, it's kind of set up in 3 sections. So the first section is my story of how I became interested in Bitcoin and what motivated me to look into it in the first place. And the middle section is, you know, because I actually spent a year in my business, offering people the ability to pay in Bitcoin. So that, so again, you know, it's that experience that I'm sharing with people so that they can see what happened with my story. And the interesting thing about that whole year when I was accepting Bitcoin as a payment method is that even though I was offering people that opportunity, and I knew that there were people who were starting to get interested in it because I'd offered them that opportunity, absolutely no one actually paid in Bitcoin at that time because they didn't really have an incentive to do so. So the middle section of the book is all about, you know, how to manage the price cycles and the reality of the fact that even if you're, as a business, even if you're advertising the fact that you accept Bitcoin as a payment method to your business, you're not necessarily going to be inundated with lots of people wanting to spend their funny money with you, because actually the people who are motivated to buy it and hold it, once they understand what it is, especially if you've got a pretty intelligent clientele, they realize that actually they want to hold on to that. But again, you know, it's just a great way of starting to encourage people to look into it. Because the thing I say to people now, you know, if as a supermarket you're saying, okay, your basket of groceries this week is £100, but if you pay in Bitcoin, we'll only charge you £80. So the person in that situation, they kind of go, okay, well, I don't know what this Bitcoin thing is, but you're giving me a powerful incentive to actually go and get some for next time I come shopping. So they go away, they buy their £80 worth of Bitcoin, and then next week they go to pay for their groceries. It's still £100 in the shop, and they say, we'll give you a discount if you pay in we'll give you a discount, so you only have to pay £80 of Bitcoin. But in that time, your Bitcoin's actually gone up in value. So the £80 worth of Bitcoin they bought last week is now only cost them £60 for their groceries. You know, as soon as you've given someone the opportunity to experience that, they're going to get it very quickly. But until you give the average person on the street a strong motivation to experience that, they're not going to get it. And even then, not everybody will, because there'll be some who go, I just give you the £100 because I haven't got the time to, you know, get interested.
You already, I feel like you skipped a few steps though. So you already mentioned earlier Gresham's law, which we should explain is the theory that bad money chases out the good.
Yep.
And so the idea is, of course, that your customers, as you just described, would want to get rid of their funny money first, if they're intelligent, he says. And actually, I don't even think they have to be that smart about it. If I come to you and I've either got Bitcoin or I've got fiat or I've got pounds in a post-Brexit economy, what am I going to spend? I'm not going to spend you the currency where they've just had a halvening and the miners are suffering, you know, this huge deficit and they've got to recover. I'm going to spend my pounds with you because I anticipate that those will go down in value. But you skipped a few steps. Why? How? Oh, wait, no, you did say something. You said that you're basically trying to encourage people to learn more about it. Do I take it to mean then you're not really expecting a large number of customers to actually pay with Bitcoin?
Not in the early days. So, you know, in the early days, it's about education and, you know, and it stimulates conversation. So as a dentist, I'm actually meeting each of my clients as an individual. So in my particular business, that it's easier to do that than it is in a shop, for example, you know, because I'm educating my patients about their healthcare, and at the same time I'm saying, you know, I can give you this as an option. So it will vary with different sorts of businesses, but just the fact that you're putting the information out there, just the fact that you're a legitimate business and you're saying that I will accept this in this situation, I think is very powerful. And so my experience, you know, and a lot of businesses worry about accepting Bitcoin because they worry about the fluctuations in the price. So in the early days, you had companies like BitPay who promised to redeem the Bitcoin straight away in order to eliminate that, because if you're a big business, that's a big problem. But of course, what happened in the fullness of time is a lot of these businesses actually dropped accepting Bitcoin because they found no one was actually using it. So because of that, they thought that it had no value. But actually, it wasn't that. It's because actually what they were doing was educating their clients to say, we will accept this as a form of payment. But once they were actually buying it, they were going, hang on a minute, I don't want to spend this. But if you give them a strong enough discount, then they've got a motivation to buy it, specifically to buy your product.
Right. So just want to pull you up there then. So I was one of those people that got a lot of businesses in 2013, 14, kind of embarrassed to say, did get a lot of businesses who only then to come back to me and say, but nobody actually spends it. What is the incentive for the business to give consumers a discount? I understand in theory, deflationary currency, they should want to do that, but that requires them to be cash flow positive. You talked about the float that they need in order to be able to do that, what is the short-term incentive for them to offer 20% discounts like you described to customers?
So it depends on the nature of the business. So for my particular business, I was operating a business with a very small number of clientele. And so what I realized was that if the country kicks into hyperinflation, the danger is that suddenly and because I was offering a high value service, if the country kicks to hyperinflation and my clients find that their assets are wiped out overnight, my business will die because all of my clients are poor. So my motivation was to actually help educate them so that if we did kick into hyperinflation, my clients would still have some money. Because, you know, at the end of the day, everybody will always need a dentist for something. But if you haven't got any money, you'd be inclined to look for that service elsewhere. Whereas if you can still afford it, and actually you appreciate that person because they're the ones who helped you still have some money in the first place, you know, because with that kind of business, it's very, very interpersonal. And so there can be a lot of personal loyalty with people like hairdressers, you know, people who are doing that kind of service. And so if they feel, if there's a Goldilocks effect from the fact that you're the one that educated them, and as a result, they actually have some money, even if they can't afford to buy as much, they'll still want to preserve that relationship with you. So
That's really nice.
It's a very subtle psychology. And obviously you need a number of levels of knowledge in order to actually address it from that perspective. But if you can see far enough in the future and you understand the dynamics that are going to play out, you know, the danger is hyperinflation. And in that situation, the middle class gets wiped out and the independent businesses get wiped out. And that's where the vulnerability lies. Whereas if you want to keep society going, you want to preserve the middle class, you want to preserve the independent businesses, because ultimately that is what will support our liberty. And so that's the perspective I come at it from. I can see that my colleagues and my friends are vulnerable. And so, you know, that's my motivation to want to help protect them.
That's a really good answer. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for asking.
All right, I think we made it through all the future epochs of Bitcoin. We might be heading towards the end of the show. I don't know. Chris says he wants to go on till the end of time.
my future epoch of Bitcoin. Just
all right, Ben, you got a future epoch of Bitcoin for us?
Well, I mean, we should all read Victoria's book. Congratulations! Like that's ace. I didn't realize you were writing a book.
Thank you.
But no, that concept of Gresham's law, that eventually good money will drive out bad money. Like short term, that may not be true, but long term, that will happen. Like over time, people become more liberated, and liberty can be found best in money. And I want to go back to a few points, and one of the points is Chris Ellis's point that if you want to become a true citizen of the future society of the fourth post-Halvening epoch, then you need to have autonomy. And one of those ways to have autonomy is to learn how to control those machines in which you engage with, which is learn to engage with them through the command line. So, you know, don't be afraid of terminal. Do some tutorials, go on YouTube and learn some tutorials. Just Google how to, you know, use the terminal to download a GitHub and run some software and whatever else. You know, you could try and run LM Bits, for example. But no, I think a lot of my stuff goes back to that was an Andreas quote, and it was perfect that if we wander into a future where like the Internet of Things is controlled by Amazon and Google, and that's dystopian. But if it's controlled and regulated by the users, then it could be a very powerful and very liberating and important thing. So on that note, you know, it's with Bitcoin and with everything else, like I think autonomy and taking control over the tools of production is very important. So learning how to develop, learning how to use terminal and command line is very important. So for the epoch we're wandering into now, I mean, I think it's all really is all going to happen very quickly. The economic crisis off the back of the 2008 didn't end with some, you know, quantitative easing. It was a can kick down the road, which we're now dealing with. And because of that, the crisis is so much more prevalent. Like currently, we're kind of winging it, and our governments are winging it, and we haven't really suffered too partially. But the economic fallout of the crisis which we're going through is going to be big, and I think Bitcoin is going to be extremely relevant. And I think, like a lot of our panelists have said, is the shift from a proprietary, managed, centralized solution to a non-proprietary, decentralized solution will happen quite quickly, and I think it will be user-led. So I'm not worried about whether governments can fit in with Bitcoin or not fit in with Bitcoin. I think the point is that it's not their choice; it's the choice of the users. If users want to shift the way in which they exchange value onto Bitcoin, then then they should. All power to them. So I'm very hopeful for Bitcoin. I'm less hopeful for society in the short term, but then in the long term, I think that or the medium to long term, we will have a more liberated society from it. So looking forward to it, and that's my little rant on Bitcoin Epoch 4.
I just want to give a quick shout out to the chat right here. SKP had everything gone in a horrible accident on Loch Ness, and already everyone knew exactly where to send him. You send him to get the Treasures Don't Float t-shirt because you deserve it. Your treasure didn't float. Also, shout out to the chat. They said they bought Victoria's book, so very cool. If you bought Victoria's book.
I'm going to go buy that right now, and everyone else who hasn't bought it needs to go buy it right now.
Wait, I have another question for Victoria. How do you make the most money from your book? Is it Kindle or physical sales? Physical hardback?
It's actually really hard to make money from books these days. I didn't do it. I didn't do it to make money. I did it to spread the word. And actually, the biggest value comes from it is establishing credibility. So for me, I've kind of left dentistry altogether because I just think this is so important. And so the easiest way for me to establish that I know something about this stuff was to write a book. And I've already had an ex-business coach send someone to me because he didn't know anything about Bitcoin, but he knew I was the only person that he knew who did. So, it works out in other ways.
See, you're speaking Chris Ellis's language right there. In the future, all we're going to need is our reputation, right, Chris? And the cute kitty behind Chris. Go ahead.
Well, I think I'm quoted as saying that trust is what you should be stacking. I think reputation systems are kind of flaky, and nobody has a reputation they care about once they're approaching death, right? If you're exiting an industry or retiring or you're dying, you don't care about your industry. So I think reputation systems do have limits, but I do think that you should be stacking trust with people as well as hard currency, because I think as an old African proverb which says that your reputation is worth an ounce of gold or something like this, so that just means being kind to people in your network, just doing things for others, and then of course you have that bond. Just wanted to clarify.
And I wanted to clarify as well, because we didn't actually mention, because obviously Chris, I mean, well done, man. You're the innovator. You got the node, the Bitcoin node on a Raspberry Pi back when Raspberry Pis were a piece of shit and they couldn't run anything. So that's quite spectacular. But now we have the Raspberry Blitz. We've got the Raspberry Bolt. But if you want to run a full Bitcoin node and you want to engage with the Lightning Network, I can fully, endorse the Raspberry Blitz. It's fantastic. You just download an image onto your SD card, plug it into your Raspberry Pi, and you're away. As long as you've got the right hard drive plugged in. If anyone out there wants to sort of join the battle of non-proprietary against proprietary, then please do download and run the Raspberry Blitz. It's a great project. And just by running software, just by engaging with terminal, just by using decentralized systems, you're advocating and fighting against the centralized, corrupt, privacy stealing systems. So
exactly, you have to withdraw your consent, and that starts with consenting to another system. And just like Victoria was saying, if you opt out of those systems by opting into something else, it's way more powerful than just moaning or complaining. just participating. If you even open up the terminal for the first time, you're already leagues above everyone else. Most people just reject it out of hand. So I definitely endorse the project that Ben just mentioned. I was never trying to be a pioneer of it. I don't even think I'm the first person to actually get it working on a Raspberry Pi. I think there were other instructions on the internet at the time, but I popularized it, and I'm glad that I did that. And so you should definitely follow the real entrepreneurs, the real business people that actually managed to make that sustainable now. And I'm in Berlin, and so I'm friends now with Christian and everyone at Room 77. So I would encourage you to go off and buy that device, the Raspberry Blitz, and to try it out.
And there was a question in the chat. They said, what do we think of Adam back? And Adam obviously had to take off, as well as Katie and some of the other people didn't get a chance to say goodbye. But just such a class act, such a nice guy, sharing his time with us today.
Anyone, it's like Jorg from Room 77 in Berlin. Anyone who's been in Bitcoin, particularly Adam back, because he's been, anyone who's been a cypherpunk pre-Bitcoin, anyone who's sort of had these ideals before there was a monetary value attached to these ideals, you have to give infinite respect to, because I don't know, for all my fucking commie speak, I don't know whether I would be here if there weren't some monetary value attached to me being here. If there wasn't if I didn't realize that Bitcoin was going to, in fact, make me some money at some point in the future. I don't know. So hopefully I would be, and I hope that I would be, but I don't know. Whereas when you meet someone like Adam back, and his time preference is so long and vast, and he talks about simplicity, and he's like, yeah, it's only got 9 operators, and eventually we'll build this. It may be a year or 2 or 3 years. And a lot of us were very eager, and we want it to all happen now. And even if Bitcoin failed and we all walked away, bros like Adam back, dudes like that, they're going to be there, and they're going to be working at it, and they're going to eventually they will break through, and they'll make all of these utopian dreams work. So an infinite respect to Adam back and the likes of all of those who were engaged in this space before Bitcoin and before there was monetary value attached to it. So no, absolutely. What a guest to have on the Halvening, for the Halvening party.
Yeah,
Absolutely
yeah, and
like,
we all know that he was quoted in the white paper. We all know he invented Hashcash. We're trying to be cool. That's it. We're all trying to be cool.
I don't want to speculate, but I was like, dude, when you put that thing in the first block about...
I was going to say, oh, dude, I nearly said it. I nearly opened up my mic and actually said that. I'm glad I didn't. I don't want to make it awkward or
myself.
Yeah.
Adam back, complete living legend.
He's amazing. It was great of him to join us. And other times too, I was in Malta once with Dan, and Dan and I are just normal Bitcoin people. Dan makes songs and I make the goofy videos. But Adam had dinner with us for like 4 hours, and it was unbelievable. And he just, I think he just wanted to talk about Bitcoin with some Bitcoin people, and it was just great, man. So we're not some big fancy deal, man. I'm the one not invited to anything. So the fact that anyone wants to invite me anywhere is great. So,
and always, it's fairly obvious if you go to a Bitcoin conference, or if you're in Bitcoin for any decent period of time, that there's some people who are here because they really do love the concept, and clearly you're one of those people. He would go. Someone like Adam, he's going to all these conferences, and he's seeing these people who sort of flare up, during the boom period, and they disappear then when there's, in the bear years, which are long draw now. But then, Thomas, you're like a work. It's on a par with what he does. It's consistent.
Agree.
Oh, thanks, Ben. It's nice of you to say. Shout out to everybody in the chat. We're talking about bars that we went to. A guy was there when we were in Riga. We had a great time in Riga. We posted it on Twitter. We said to everyone, hey, come to this bar. And then everyone came to the bar. It was amazing. They're also asking if we'll be back in London anytime soon. And you know how it is with the travel conditions. We just got to go with the best information we have. And Facebook and Google are keeping their employees in till 2021. Taylor Swift isn't having concerts till 2021. So I don't think I'm going to be traveling anytime soon. But hopefully we can keep hanging out in these fun video hangouts and we'll always have YouTube, right? At least until we don't.
You do realize that means the price isn't going to go up, Thomas, if you're not touring.
It's a sacrifice we're all going to have to make. Without the mad tour bump, will be difficult for Bitcoin to maintain its price levels, but we'll have to see how that goes. Anything else you guys want to say? Is everybody tired out?
I mean, you know, we've weathered the storm. We've been here for a few halvenings, whatever. I mean, most people on this panel, they've been, you know, you've been here for a while. But I mean, Christ, man, we're still so early. Like, it's all still so early, and it's so relevant now. Like in the current crisis we're in, where people are just looking for some stability. You know, and we can stably say that, you know, in 200 and so many blocks, you know, we'll have another halvening. Like, it's such an important quality to have in a very unstable, what looks like a very unstable future. So, you know, cheers to that, man. And I just like, fuck, you know.
Yeah, well done, everyone.
Yes, cheers, cheers, cheers. Bitcoin.
I think most of the really important platform and project have to be built. We are not even at the beginning, I think, of what this technology is going to bring.
Absolutely, man.
People that know me personally know that I'm not just into Bitcoin. I'm into that tech, and I know that what that tech can do. I just don't think the people are ready for it, and the government not at all.
Well, I mean, it's like, as far as Bitcoin's concerned, like, it's a commodity. I mean, I view it as a commodity. Like, monetary value transfer is just the first goofy use of that commodity money. But there's a whole bunch of other uses. You know, we're leveraging all that security by all that hash rate. Like, there's so many other things you can provide using that service in this sort of digital age. But no, we shouldn't just limit it to value transfer. This is what I'm most looking forward to in the next epoch. I really am looking forward to, like, why die, Nick Szabo, smart contract, social scalability stuff, which I think we are going to have more of, because it's the next obvious evolutionary step. Like, okay, we've got this, like, decentralized value transfer system, and why can't we get it to transfer digital assets? Or why can't we take, you know, shares of a company, for example, and then have them transferred in a censorship resistant way? Like, all that stuff's very plausible, very possible, and in the current, or the very soon economic crisis, that will all seem very viable, to have that social scalability where you don't have to rely on people and institutions like state institutions to lock down your, you know, your assets, your shares, or whatever else. So yeah, man, totally looking forward to it. It's gonna be great.
I think it's the first time we have a tech that can allow the people of Earth to actually free themselves for a lot of things. Now, the problem is you have to be careful what you wish for. We live in a system. We all had to take the red pill, go into the rabbit hole, and dig and learn and do a lot of work to try to understand how our world today of finance, the economy, function. And we were, I don't know, I was pretty much aware of how manipulated, without conspiracy theory and bullshit like that, although some of them are funny, you know. But you know, at the end of the day, there is a planet, there is resources on it, and our governments are fighting to steal everything they can, so we as a population can, putting simply, function. And so the problem is when you start saying, okay, there is a tech to be transparent, immutable, and on top of that, where you can share things. Are you going to share? And some guys are going to say, well, no, I want it all. Well, you can't have it all. We said we were going to share now and be nice and share the resources of this planet together and look after it. Well, fuck that. I've got guns. So this is we are this is why I'm exciting about blockchain, not just Bitcoin, but blockchain as well, because it's a liberating tool. And from my accent, you already know where I'm from. You can see it in my background. So freedom is really important. You know, my country of origin is not the best for entrepreneurial, but we have really good engineers. It's not the best for entrepreneurial purposes for many reasons, but I'm not here to debate that. But at the same time, we are very big on freedom. And a lot of people where I'm from are doing everything they can to change things. The yellow jackets you see over by the way, that's a really cool piece of art from a guy called P-Boy in Paris. He had Bitcoin and he had €1,000 stuck, hidden in the inside the painting on the fresque on the wall in Paris. It was awesome. Thousands of people went to visit, and all of them tried to get the money. Anyway, that's the kind of stuff you can do as well with Bitcoin nowadays. But to finish off, I'm super excited because I think this tech can really free the people. What scares me a bit is imagine if it was true. What are we going to build? Imagine tomorrow, like Obi was saying, everybody gets educated, everybody understands that the game is game, basically, is rigged. We change it, or we try to change it, we need to design it. Where do you start?
Well, we just need to replicate what's currently there. So,
do you think so?
Now, yeah, now we can replicate what's currently there. We can surpass it, like with some of the microtransaction stuff you do on a Lightning Network. But no, we just need to replicate the current financials, just in case people need it as like a, oh no, my currency is just completely depleted to nothing. Like, what else can we switch to? Like, we need to have Bitcoin there as like a viable alternative. And like it is now, we're almost getting to the point where we can simulate all the things which a legacy financial instrument like a fiat currency can do. And a Visa network can do. So with some of the second layer stuff. So like, as long as we can replicate what currently exists, everything from there is a win. It's like, okay, now we can do like crazy microtransactions and have like streaming content and all this other bollocks. Great. But for now, like, we just need to concentrate on replicating what currently is there. And like, as you say, like, obviously from your accent, the tricolor, the fraternity, equality, and liberty. They're the three points we should have in our foremost mind. Like, how do we most liberate people? How do we have most fraternity? And how do we have most equality for the majority of people? And the best way of doing that is through consensus. And like, how do you achieve consensus? Well, all the innovation, just like all the innovation in something like a field of cryptography is now being done in Bitcoin. All the innovation in consensus building is now being done in something like Bitcoin. Because how do we decide how this crazy money protocol is going to work? Well, it's done through this mechanism called consensus. And consensus tackles those three ideas like fraternity, equality, and liberty. How do you get there? Well, okay, we need to all come together and make decisions on how this thing will work collectively to benefit all of us. So no, it's those French revolutionary ideals are very relevant to Bitcoin, and I hope to.
You see, this is the point. This is where it gets interesting. But I don't know. I don't want to bore the other people on the panel there and online as well. But we could debate it forever. The French Revolution was geared up and was pushed by the bourgeois. So there is always, you see, different agendas. The people think the people of France went in the street and they wanted to fight the aristocracy and the cut heads, and they said, no, we want freedom. And the reality is really interesting. Elite thinkers and bourgeois people said,
there's the dentists.
Maybe, exactly.
Exactly.
It was those guys that were being taxed to the max that said, you know what, let's organize something,
chop off all their heads,
and remove those guys, because you had the royalties people that were parading in this beautiful Versailles.
But it was one step closer to fraternity, liberty, and
Yeah,
equality.
oh,
wasn't
no, of course, it was beautiful. But again, there is a difference between what you read in the history books and what they try to inject into your brain and the reality of what really happened. This is why historians are really important, and history always repeat, and history also repeats if you forget. So we better remember what happened before. By the way, what happened just after Halving? In
Price
general, what happened?
went down a little, went back up. I don't know.
Yeah.